That was the weirdest way to sit down in a chair. Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. My name is Becca if you're new here. If not, welcome back. Today I'm here to talk about something that we are all guilty of. And that is food waste. This is something I'm pretty passionate about, so excuse the loud gestures that I'm sure I'm going to be sharing with you guys. So this is something that I think probably too much about, and I'm always trying to learn more and to get better at this because there's nothing that drives me more crazy than going over to other people's houses and seeing how much food waste happens. But what actually drives me even more bonkers is when I waste food myself. Like, I get so sad because it is just a huge waste of your own money. It's so bad for the environment. Like, it's just so wasteful and so unnecessary. But again, accidents happen and they happen to everybody. I think it's just all about being more mindful and just trying to learn a few things like in this video and just incorporating these things slowly into your life. And maybe it's just one piece at a time, and eventually we'll all get better together. First is freezing your food scraps and turning them into veggie broth. So this is something that I've learned this past year, and it is one of my favorite things in the whole world because you're taking something that I would have thrown into the garbage can and I'm turning it into liquid gold. It is so good. It's so tasty. It's just so easy. Like, all I do is I have this little plastic baggie that I keep in my freezer. There's certain little veggie bits that are so good in veggie broth. Onion scraps, so like skins and the ends that you don't use, straight in there. Celery bits, tops and bottoms, whatever you don't use, straight in there. Carrots, again, the butts. Oh, hello, my little friend. You are supposed to be napping. Hi. Oh. I lost my thought. Okay, so the four golden gods of veggie broth are onion bits, celery, carrots, and garlic. So any little piece of that, as long as it's not moldy, chuck it into your little freezer bag and make it into veggie broth. The other rule of thumb is that most of the other veggies you can put in small amounts. Bell peppers, for example, you can put in a little bit, just don't make it a majority of the overall stock. Same with like potato skins and a lot of things. The only veggies that I know of that you're definitely not supposed to put in are cabbage and things of the cabbage family because they are so overpowering. So the next tip that I have is meal planning. I think that there are two types of people in this world. There are the hardcore meal planners that have life all figured out. They will sit down with a list and write out what they're having the entire week, and that is phenomenal. I cannot do that. I'm the kind of person that looks at the fridge 5 minutes before I'm supposed to be making dinner. I look and see what's about to go bad first, and then I'm like, okay, this is what dinner is. We're going to incorporate and focus around this veggie or whatever. Both types are great. Both types work. The other thing with meal planning too is I have a running list of meals that we frequently eat and that we always enjoy. Then you kind of know more of what to shop for, and so you're not just getting all this stuff willy-nilly and having it go bad. Along with that, you have your grocery list. So shopping with intention. Instead of just showing up at the grocery store, especially if you're hungry, never go hungry, and impulse buying all these different things like your prepackaged snacks and your goodies and your treats, you end up wasting all the things that you did buy with good intentions. I will always reach for the ice cream before I reach for the yummy mango that I bought for snacking on. And then it's just really sad because the mango starts to go bad and you're like, dang it, I just wasted something that I love and that I really would have enjoyed eating. It's really important to have your grocery list and try to stick with it. Like, of course, getting a few treats is good, but just try not to go crazy and overboard. The next is making your leftovers look really exciting. I have never had this problem, but I know a lot of people have a problem eating their leftovers, which baffles my mind because I love leftovers like almost more than anything. I put in the time and the work to make a delicious meal, and so then I don't have to think about lunch the next day or even sometimes dinner. Honestly, my favorite thing. They're no effort and it's quick and easy and delicious and healthy. Talking to some of the friends that I know have this issue, things that I've learned from them are keeping things really accessible and inviting. So having like a nice, pretty, clear glass Tupperware instead of like a cloudy, old, like kind of gross Tupperware. Because if you can plainly see that, oh, I have the pasta dish that I made yesterday, you're a lot more likely to reach for it and eat it the next day. Whereas if you have it in a, like, you know, an old butter container, you don't know what's in there, you forget about it, it gets pushed back in the fridge, you find it 2 weeks later, it's all moldy, it's gone. The other thing too is just keeping it at the front of the fridge. So never try to let it get pushed back, because that's when things get lost. And then next thing is packing up your dinner kind of with a little more intentionality. So one of us has work the next day. The options are eating out for lunch or taking leftovers. Then I will pack a single serve Tupperware with just like a good sized amount of food for lunch the next day for one of us to take. So then you know exactly what you're having. You plan on taking it. You know that you're not going to get takeout, and it just prevents a lot of food waste. So the next one is composting. And this is another one that I absolutely am thrilled by, because to me, it's taking something that is just so toxic and turning it into something that is just so beautiful. The more you learn about food waste and how bad it is for the environment, it just sets my little soul on fire. Because when you're putting food scraps into your plastic garbage bag that then gets into a landfill, when the food tries to decompose, there's nowhere for it to escape. It starts building up all this methane gas. It turns really bad for the environment and the ozone layer. And the other option is just taking those food scraps and putting it into a compost. So the way that we have it set up, we have a little bucket in our kitchen that throughout the day we'll put all of our food scraps in, or anything that can biodegrade, essentially. So like sometimes my son will bring in like leaves or sticks or something, and yeah, I don't throw them in the garbage can. That's weird and backwards. Like, let nature take care of what nature can. We'll fill up our bucket, and then we have one of those like purchased compost bins. Like, nothing fancy. We're not compost experts. So some of the tips with composting, you like how his head is just like barely in the frame. The general rule of thumbs is that you should have more brown to green. Your food scraps are green because green means wet. Kind of. All of your food scraps, you dump them in, and then put a layer of dried brown stuff, like dried leaves or dried grass, or even like cardboard, plain cardboard, no print stuff on it, or paper, things that will help layer and have air come through it, because that's what's important for the biome of your compost pile. It needs to be able to breathe. Basically the essence of how you compost. It's really not that complicated, and even if you screw it up, which we do all the time, like, it's so easy to fix. Like, you just add some more brown, it's good to go. Taking something that would have been so toxic and turning it into something that is so healthy for the earth is just my favorite thing in the world. Some more tips on composting, because a lot of people are like, oh, I live in a big city, I can't compost. A couple of things to think about. One, in New York City, where I lived for a while, I know that they had several ways of composting. They had these different partners throughout the city, and you could either take your stuff to the compost place and dump it there, or some places even had a pickup. Another option, if you have any kind of outside space at all, even if it's just a concrete slab patio, you can still get a compost bin and still compost in that. I've had friends that have done that, and they are shocked that they actually still get worms inside of it. It still turns into compost. Like, nature is incredible if you let it do what it wants to do. Another perk with composting, so like, I know for us, we don't actually throw away a lot of stuff. What ended up happening is we would throw all of this like thin plastic that can't be recycled and a bunch of food scraps, and the food scraps would get so stinky because, again, there's no aeration. It would just kind of sit and rot. But by using this power couple of putting things in the broth bag or composting, you're just eliminating all of that from your garbage, so it doesn't get stinky nearly as fast. It's amazing. I love it so much, in case you can't tell. So the next one is not eating out very often, and this, I know it can be a very hard one, but it's kind of a double whammy of food waste, because typically you buy your groceries for the week because you did your meal planning in your grocery list, and by going out and eating, you are letting a lot of your things go to waste, and they just get sadder by the day. So you have food waste from that, but then also restaurants just inherently have a lot of food waste, and there's not many ways around that unless you get really lucky and have an incredible restaurant in your town that is very mindful of that. So having really yummy and low energy and quick meals at your disposal is so important, because I know a lot of times, like, we roll in the door, it's already past dinner time, we're all starving, like, I don't have time to sit there and chop up onions and make this delicious homemade meal. So one of the things that we like to do is making a bunch of food at once and then like keeping it in the freezer, so then it's on hand for when we roll in super late. For example, we really like these banana pancakes, and I will quintuple the batch, and then we have these giant stacks of pancakes for dinner, and it's incredible. Everybody's happy. Some other quick, easy meal ideas we make, or you can buy some like sourdough English muffins. We keep them in the freezer, boom, dinner's done. Just spread some avocado and pesto on it, or, you know, Just get creative. Find out what you really enjoy, what works well for you. So if that's ramen, or if it's quesadillas, or if it's cereal, like you do you know what you like to eat. And just making sure that you have those on hand for when you don't have time or the energy to cook. So the next tip is eating more of your produce. I don't know where it came from, but the fact that like we don't eat celery tops, for example, they're totally edible. They're so nutritious. Like, where did this come from? They're actually super tasty too. And the same thing with kiwi skins. Like, to me, eating a kiwi skin is the same as eating an apple. Like, there's a lot of nutrition in it. I actually enjoy the flavor of it. Some people are bothered by the little hairs, but I find that if I wash it, which you should be washing all of your produce anyways, I feel like I don't even notice the hairs anymore. And if that really bothers you, get the golden kiwis because they're not fuzzy at all. Another one that kind of blows my mind that people still do is peeling potatoes. I am too lazy for that. I cannot be bothered to spend the time peeling all of my potatoes that I'm using. I once saw a food waste video about how you can peel all of your potato skins and then basically fry them up with a bunch of oil and salt, and you have these delicious treats, but I can't be bothered to peel them in the first place. Like, even if I'm making mashed potatoes, they mash up. You can't even tell if they're in there. I don't know. Yeah, I just can't be bothered. So we would peel all these potatoes for dinner growing up, and all of those skins would go into the garbage can. But now, first, I would eat them. But if you choose not to eat them for your own reasons, now we know that you can put some of them into your veggie broth bag and then the rest can go into compost. They do not need to go into the garbage can. The next is knowing where to store things. So if you're a little less literate in the kitchen, it might take a while to figure out where to store things. So for example, bananas store really well on the countertop out of the sunshine if you don't want them to ripen too fast. You should be storing your fruits and veggies separate from each other in the fridge because a lot of times fruits and veggies, they help each other to ripen faster, which sometimes can be a useful thing, but a lot of times it just makes your food go bad before you can get to it. Potatoes, for example, should be kept separate from onions in a dry, dark spot. So it's just learning all of these different places and where to store them so that they keep better so that you have less food waste. Another one I learned fairly recently is that mushrooms do best in just like a brown paper bag. I would always store them in the plastic baggies that they would come in, and I found that they would get so slimy so fast, and so then I googled it because it would bother me, and yeah, come to find out, best in paper bags. Avocados are another big one because the joke is that one day your avocado is rock hard and bright green, to the next day it is just gone, like it's unusable. I feel like I never have this problem because as soon as an avocado sits on my counter for long enough, it starts to go soft, I immediately put it into the fridge and then it stays in there for days. Let's be honest, like avocados do not last long enough in this house to go bad. So maybe that's just not an issue here. Next is learning the rot rates of food. And yes, I did just make up that phrase. Essentially what it comes down to is the fact that raspberries will go bad within like a day or two. All the way to potatoes, they won't go bad for a couple of weeks. All the way to squashes, like they will take months sometimes to go bad. And so just having a really good knowledge of how fast things go bad will really help you in your grocery shopping and your meal planning. Because if you go to the store and you're just buying spinach and berries and all these things that go off really fast, you're going to have a very hard time eating it all quickly enough. But you know you best. And so if you know that like this is what you like to eat and you know that you can eat it within a couple days, that's great. That's perfect for you. I know for me personally, I like to get a variety, and so I'll get the things that go bad fast, but I'll also make sure to get the things that go bad slower. So then I'm not going to the grocery store every couple of days. I can, stretch it out to like a week or even two sometimes and still have, fresh produce to last me all week long. But if you accidentally did find that you bought too much of the stuff that goes bad faster, then a good handy tip is one that I use all the time is freezing things. I don't understand when people don't use their freezer that much. I'm using it all the time. Like I never have enough freezer space. Things that I always have in my freezer: frozen berries, bananas. I'll buy bananas in bunches, let them get all brown and speckly because that's when I like using them the best for like smoothies and baking things and our oatmeal and stuff like that. If we have any sort of veggie or fruit that's just gonna go bad, I'll cut off the bad parts and then freeze it so then I can pull it out later. Like our green beans were about to go bad the other day. Cut off any of the little sad bits, and then I just put it in a little baggie in the freezer. So then I can pull it out like this week sometime when we want some fresh green beans. I can cook them up on the side of our meal or whatever. We also really like to freeze our breads. So I'll get a loaf of bread, but we don't eat bread that often. So I'll just keep it in the freezer, and when we need it, I'll just take a few slices off of it, and then we're good to go. Instead of just letting it mold on the countertop, or worse, like letting it turn into a brick. When you thaw it out, I find that it is like pretty much exactly as it was is how I froze it in the first place. And then again, another way that I really like using our freezer is having ready to go meals ready to eat for the days that you don't have time. So like our English sourdough muffins or our pancakes or just anything like that. So the next one is having user up meals. And yes, this is another phrase that I just made up. So this is a really important one that I have found that really helps cut down on food waste, is having these meals that you have like once or twice a week that you can throw in so many random bits and bobs in, and it doesn't matter. So some examples of this are like pad thai. I can put so many random vegetables in it, and I find it just makes it better. The same thing goes with like bolognese or breakfast burritos, because again, like you chop everything up, you cook it all together, it just turns into this delicious like medley of random things, and then, you know, covered up with potatoes, and then you wrap it in a tortilla. You can't even see what you're eating, and it's just always so delicious. It uses up so many little sad things that would have just gone to waste otherwise, and boom. Saves you money. Another good one that we are always using is making smoothies. You can hide a deceptively weird amount of stuff in your smoothies, like carrots and celery and all these things. Sometimes I put together my smoothie and I feel like I'm putting together Thanksgiving dinner. I'll even add peas or beans. Like it's crazy because it all gets blended up. If you have enough fruit in it, then it just covers up all the weird stuff, and I love it because I feel like I'm just adding even more nutrition to it, along with stopping a lot of food waste. So okay, so my last tip that I have is keeping your fridge nice and organized, because if you have a disheveled, overwhelming fridge, that means that you don't know what's in it. That means that everything is getting pushed to the back, and that means that you have a lot of rotting food in there. But if you can manage to keep your fridge tidy and organized, then you know what is in there. You know what's about to go bad, so then you can use it up sooner, because a lot of times when we know that something is about to go bad, it's like a painful thing in our minds, because nobody likes the feeling of food waste. If it's painful, you just want to kind of let it get pushed back and you don't have to think about it. It's a delayed, what's that called? There's a word for that. But it prevents a lot of food waste and just keeping your fridge tidy and organized. And we have a really small fridge because we're in New Zealand. So it actually makes us stay more on top of our game, I feel. Because these big, massive fridges that I'm used to in the US, you can put so much in it. I think one of the big things about food waste is just not letting everything get pushed back. The more towards the front it is, the more you see it, the more you know about it, the more likely you are to use it. I think that is everything that I have on my list. If you have anything that you use in your daily life, please let me know, because I'm such a nerd about food waste and it is just such an important thing to me. And I love sharing tips with everybody. Hopefully you learned something. If you did, again, just let me know because it makes me so happy. Please don't feel overwhelmed if like you're not the best about food waste. Maybe just pick one thing that sounds the most easy to incorporate into your life, and then just do that for a while and see how it goes. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next week. Bye. Yeah, I'm all done. Woohoo!